what is the BESS market landscape in the Nordics, and what are we interested in? So a little bit of a history tour of what's happening in the BESS space, primarily in the Nordics. We saw that the start of BESS was really for specific storage needs. Like for myself, coming from Australia, we saw batteries, large batteries coming online 2015, 2016. Most of these were coming around the world for specific grids that needed storage for a specific purpose. Maybe it was a place that was isolated from the grid. Maybe it was someone with a lot of renewables already, or maybe a place with specific government subsidies. But for the Nordics, the first real wave of BESS coming online was in 2022 to 2024. So we sort of call this like the FCR boom. A lot of batteries were coming online to make money off the short frequency market, so FFR and FCR, as many on the call will know about. And because these are short markets, a lot of the batteries that were being built were 1-hour systems, maybe even a bit smaller. And this first FCR boom really came off the back of really high prices and quite high returns for those who were in the space at that time. As a result, though, a lot of people are now interested in the space. They've seen these high returns. They've seen these reports saying I can make a lot of money on FCRD. And now a lot of batteries are flocking into the Nordics. So this is where these initial saturation concerns are coming from. And part of this is because the amount of BESS or batteries coming onto the market are roughly similar to the whole size of the short-term frequency markets. We're also seeing CapEx coming down quite a lot for these battery systems. So as you can see, a 40% drop since 2019. This number differs, depending on which report you look at, but in general, battery equipment is becoming a lot cheaper. The reliability is going up. The cycle limits are going up. These are becoming having longer warranties. And also we're seeing that the duration of these batteries are getting a lot larger. If you look in countries like Australia or California and Texas, or you look at Spain, we're seeing really long duration batteries being built, things that weren't really seen as possible 5 or 10 years ago. The next thing that's happening is the fact that renewables need storage. I'm going to go through a few different slides in this session to talk about what that relationship looks like and what is that scale. But I think this is the most simple base case need for storage. Renewables are inherently volatile. They can produce a lot if the sun or the wind is producing, and sometimes they don't produce much. So it's really the perfect case for batteries and other flexible assets to come in to soak up that energy when it's plentiful and discharge when it's not. But we still have that question of how much is too much. Are we going to get to the place where maybe there are too many batteries on the market and the market becomes too stable? Some would argue that's a good thing, but for those building these batteries, they want to be really sure that they're going to get good returns and really stable income in the future. But these are things that we'll talk through in the webinar today. So I want to dive in on Finland. I think this is a really interesting space for what's happening in terms of electricity consumption, but also production. So Finland, while it's a relatively small country, there's a large increase in electricity consumption forecasted for the region. So the actual demand for electricity is going to go up quite a lot over the next 10 years. So this is coming from Fingrid, the Finnish TSO. We can see that electricity consumption may double in the next 10 years. A lot of this is driven by green or electricity-based industry, and also a lot of data centers coming to the region. Luckily, this is paired with a large increase in electricity production. And if you look at the dark colors on that graph, most of the increase is coming from solar and wind. So that means relatively cheap electricity coming into the market, but also there'll be that volatility. And so we know volatility means that there will be some high prices, some low prices, maybe some imbalance that will happen into the grid. But overall, that means there will be this long-term need for BESS to handle this large amount of solar and wind that's coming to the market. This graph I find quite interesting. It's from LCP Delta, and this is looking at the expected BESS power capacity across Europe. And I like to look at this one when people say things like Sweden's full or the Nordics are full or we already have too much BESS in a certain place. It's a really interesting discussion of how much is too much. And as I said, we had that early adoption, the small niche batteries that came on in the early days. We're now in this FCR build out. Yes, there are some really big pipelines and big batteries being built, but depending on who you talk to, the long-term scale of the amount of batteries coming into the market, it is a really large number. And so, yes, certain countries will be dominating this demand, but still, we see that the need for deep and plentiful batteries will be really large, but primarily focused on balancing the wholesale market. And so once again, that is trying to balance the volatility that comes from solar and wind and other cheap forms of electricity, but also as these grids become more interconnected, there will be more opportunities for BESS to balance those grids. Another way to look at this is to even compare the whole size of the balancing markets to the expected amount of wind that's coming to Finland. So on the bottom left, you can see this little tiny sliver. This is the low high estimate for how big the balancing market will be in Finland by 2035. As you can see, it's really small compared to how much wind is potentially going to come online. Uh, Obviously, this is a quite a large range of possibilities. So, the low is around 14 gigawatts and the high is around 53. But even if we hit that low scenario, that's a lot of gigawatts that will need storage in the grid to be able to absorb that flexibility and provide that service to the grid. And so while at the moment a lot of batteries are focused on short-term balancing markets, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call have built uh, revenue models or built business cases around these markets, the long-term play really will be in the wholesale markets, and that's where we think the long-term place will be. And so just to make sure everyone's on the same page, when we're talking about balancing markets, we have the really short ones being FFR, FCRD, and FCRN. So these ones are relatively small, but a great opportunity for BESS over the past 4 or so years. Now we're seeing people move to the deeper balancing markets, so AFR and MFR. I'm going to give a little bit of information about MFR in the next couple of slides. And when we say wholesale, we're talking about day ahead, intraday, and imbalance. Overall, especially for day ahead and intraday, there are some big changes coming to the markets in coming months, actually. We're moving to the 15-minute interval, and I'll give a little example of what we think will happen when that happens. So touching on MFRR, this is not really the most obvious place for a battery to trade, and we've seen many people in the market either not talk about it or not touch on it in their business cases. But here at Sympower, this is something that we have some experience in trading our C&I assets on the MFRR market. But also, we think that there is a decent business case to trade batteries in MFRR going forward. One of the big differences between MFRR and FCR is it's not just a capacity bid. You place a capacity and an energy bid. So the TSO is really paying for your capacity commitment, but for the energy component, you don't get paid if you don't get activated. So it's a little bit of a different business case or a different way of providing help to the grid. We know that in many markets around the world, a lot of assets are being paid a lot of money to be available. But in the case of things like MFRR, a lot of the money actually comes from doing something, from actually doing the activation and being activated. And this is where the fear can start to happen for BESS. It is good to be activated to get that revenue, but that also means we have to monitor our state of charge, make sure we're not too full or too empty, and that's where the optimization comes in. Doing this properly can make it a really attractive business case, but if you don't do it properly and you don't have a really good strategy, you're probably going to get a lot of fines and have a tough time. So a little bit of the background on what's changing in the MFR market. Procurement in MFR capacity is expected to grow rapidly over the coming years in the Nordics. There are many reasons for this. One simple reason is that when we have more solar and wind, and we also have more dependency on interconnectors, there's probably going to be more imbalance. And MFR and AFR, they primarily are there to manage large imbalance events. Also, activations are typically quite rare and shallow, but this also may have some changes in the patterns. So as we saw yesterday, we're moving to the EAM system, so the automated activation of MFR. This optimizer that is making these activations, it doesn't hesitate. If it thinks there's an imbalance, it's going to call on assets and it will do that. So generically, we're expecting that activations will become more frequent, but probably stay quite shallow. And if anything, that's a good thing for BESS. We want to have lots of small activations, times where the batteries can help make the grid more stable, and hopefully get some really good arbitrage revenue for that. As I mentioned, a lot of markets are moving to the 15-minute window. So instead of an hour, we're getting shorter to 15 minutes. Once again, this is great for BESS because these long activations are where we can get a bit scared of state of charge management. But as I said, there are many trading strategies that you can use to help BESS participate in MFR. And if that's something you're interested in, this is definitely something we can talk about in the future. And talking about wholesale as well, there are multiple wholesale markets that I mentioned, so day ahead, intraday, and imbalance. Sometimes they act very similarly, but sometimes they have really different behaviors across the day. This is an example in Finland last year, where you can see the day ahead price in black, the intraday price at different times of the day in blue, and the imbalance price in green. So these fluctuations are changing every moment, and this is where an optimizer is looking at these, making predictions, taking the most of these opportunities, and then generating revenue for your battery. Moving to a 15-minute window, from what we've seen in many other markets, it just makes the prices more volatile or spiky, as you can see in this case for the Netherlands. We've seen this in so many markets around the world where they've moved to shorter intervals. The average price for the consumer or for the wholesale market, it's pretty much the same, but the variation in price will increase. This is great for batteries to take advantage of these short arbitrage moments. This may mean that if you have a battery that has a deeper energy component or a lot of cycles, you can capture this. But this is all good news for BESS. So some of the takeaways from this part of the presentation is that the BESS revenue stack is and will continue to evolve. Whoever has batteries will need to make sure you're always looking forward at the next place that you're going to generate revenue and make sure you're prepared for that. There are some saturation concerns of these base markets, things like FCR and FCRD. These markets are likely to saturate, and so we need to have optimization across multiple markets, primarily the energy ones. But overall, there is space for gigawatts of large BESS to have good, strong business cases to pay for themselves. However, maybe there needs to be a change to the business case or the approach to how we build these batteries.